This begins part 2 of the Bodega Bay sketch. Now we began by starting with the idea of the sketch that is done with a 2B and a double E, and these pencils need to be very sharp, and I use a small knife to sharpen it, and I also use a sandpaper block in order to come to a very fine point. Now I'm going to show you the completion of this sketch. I did it on a very good fine piece of drawing paper, and I use a 2B that can be shaded from the darkest part to the lightest. Sometimes I use the side of the pencil to shade. And this could take a great deal of time, and it's wonderful to be on location, to be exactly where you want to be and at the right time of day. These sketches are priceless because they last forever, and you could go back into your studio and be reminded of all the little nuances and the details that oftentimes, if you are rendering quickly on a good piece of watercolor paper, you will miss the details. And sometimes when the boats come and go, you can just stop the sketch where you are and add the little boats as they sail by, kind of like this. And oftentimes these boats will come in and go away, and you're just halfway through your sketch, and all of a sudden you think, oh my, what am I going to do now? But then you have your sketch. So you go back and you make your reference. And oftentimes I will sketch these little elements, even on the margins, sometimes on the side of my sketchbook, whatever is available. I will make a sketch of something that interests me. Now, these are small trees on the distant shore, and they're very deep and dark in their coloration, so they will add and enhance a great deal to the finished product. And I'll just do a few of them over here. Now, sometimes your hand will move across the paper and will do what I've just done, and that would be to blur or mark. And so we carry a very nice soft eraser to pick up those marks, and we're a little bit more careful next time. But I think it's good to show you the things that can happen along the way as an artist is preparing for their final product. Now, I have enough of this sketch to show you the annotation. I started the other section of drawing by showing some brushes. So I want to show you the other ones that I use. And these are the Aquarelle brushes. This is the 1 inch, 3/4, the 1/8. And then these are smaller rounds. And I love these particular ones because of the way in which they just simply fit in your hand. So these are my favorite brushes, as well as a small old toothbrush, which I use for spatters. That's another one of my very favorites. Now, the tubes of paint, I will show you. I use, hopefully always, I'm able to get the Winsor Newton brand. It isn't always available, but I use these wonderful tubes. This happens to be a cerulean, and you just take and unscrew the tube, and you squirt it out, and you refresh the well with clean water and with clean pigment. These last pretty well as long as you're careful with them and don't leave them in the sun. I usually refresh my palette before I go out painting every time. And I do clean the palette, but I don't completely empty all the wells because this is quite expensive. Some of these yellows are very costly, and I like to be as conservative as possible with the pigments I use, although I will never hesitate to use a color where I need it. And I do buy vermilion, which is extremely expensive, but I love it. And just to tell you, it might be as much as $35 a tube, so that is quite expensive. Just to talk a little bit about the water, very often I will clean the water and have it refreshed before I use each of the colors, sometimes beginning with the yellows, beginning with the yellow ochre. I will have a fresh pan of water to accommodate that. Each of the colors will leave a little residue as you work. The first thing to consider is the light source, and it's going to be warm colors from the sun coming in early morning. Best time to work is somewhere before 10 o'clock and then also later in the afternoon. Right at the noon hour with the sun beating down, it is very, very hard to work because, first of all, the shadows will begin to change and you'll have a whole different, completely different picture by the afternoon. Not to mention the fact that you get tired, and working about 2 hours is the perfect time frame. Now I'm just applying this warm yellow here and there across the paper. Again, this is an annotated sketch and I'm on very good quality, but still in all, it is drawing paper. It is not meant for watercolor. So I'm showing the warm color as it reflects down in the foreground like this, and also on the side of the hills a little bit like that, and on the side of the building. Now I will turn my attention to the hills and will accommodate a warm gray, and usually I'll use French ultramarine and alizarin for a very nice gray. And I mix it down on the palette and have a light gray for the hillside, and just begin in here, one light touch on this fairly delicate paper. It will become soggy very quickly, but I do want to indicate the erosion lines and the movement just like that. All right. Now we have the hillside established, and I'm going to show the reflection in the water, and I'm going to work with Prussian blue, and again, just a few quick strokes, and I'm going to need to go to a little smaller chisel. This will be the 3/4 inch chisel, and I'm going to use Prussian blue, and I'm just going to start vertical strokes that will be reflective, and they will come right over the yellow. And again, annotation is an indication of what will come later. In the full-blown watercolor, you will use many, many more blues and colors that will overlay, 2 or 3 overlays on your really good paper. Under the pier is going to be somewhat darker, and I want to show the ripples coming in with French ultramarine, and we start with right under the pier and the reflection of the posts as they will come down into the water like this. Now, I love to work with the Impressionist style. That is short, quick strokes, very definite, very secure as the strokes come in. And I'm using, first of all, I had horizontal strokes, or pardon me, vertical strokes with the warm, and now I'm doing horizontal strokes, and I'm considering the perspective as the waves come closer to you. This helps move your eye towards what is, of course, the center of interest, which is this little fishing boat. These strokes are creating the mirror image, and right behind this little boat will be a lost and found edge, and again the mirror image like that, and the same thing on this side, and you reflect it like this, and then the horizontal and the vertical will create a reflection that will be very pretty. And I'm going to come in with Viridian and Cerulean in the foreground and add to the vertical strokes. The Viridian being in the more shallow water, and the Cerulean very harmonious to all of it. So here we see the use of the Viridian over the yellow that is there before. Now we see the possibilities that will later be remembered when the fine piece of d'Arches paper is used. I work on 100% rag d'Arches paper, usually a 140. My favorite paper, however, is a 300 weight. And where do they get the 300 and where do they get the 140? Well, a ream would weigh 300 pounds. And that's where the 300 weight comes from. A ream would weigh 140 pounds. All right. Now I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. And again, this will be this chisel, and this is a 1/2 inch chisel. And I'm going to establish a few of the colors on the pier, and just random, I'm using burnt sienna, and I don't want to fill it all in, just a little bit. Use a little bit of alizarin crimson with the burnt sienna is very, very pretty. I love these colors together. And here are the worms, and some of the poles could be that color too. And again, the barrels on the pier could move to the reddish tones like this. And this is a quick annotated sketch, which is a reminder sketch of the colors that will come later. Oh, what about the roof up there? Well, some yellow and a little bit of the reddish tone and a little bit of the burnt sienna tone, just like this. Again, a reminder of what is yet to come. And the planks, the siding of the little barn on the surface of the pier. All right. Well, I'm getting into this already. I can feel the excitement. I love this subject. I'm going to add a bit of the brown up here for the annotation so I can remember. And on the side of the boat, even though it's a white boat, it will be shaded. I like to use Payne's Gray. It's a soft, warm gray, leaning actually to the bluish side. And it is very, very easy to use and also easy to remove. If you make a mistake, you can lift it. And that's a really good thing to remember. All right. I've got an inside of a little fishing boat, and that will go into Payne's Gray, like that. Over here on the pier, Well, first of all, I want to go into the water again and make sure that under the pier it is a little darker with the water reflecting down just like that. And it sets it off very nicely. And also over here, same thing is happening under the pier over here. Now there's much more to do, but this annotation gives a suggestion of what is yet to come. I will do just a little bit more in the foreground with these horizontal little ripples and waves and things coming into the shore. And the whole foreground sparkles with light and dark, and it will be the focus. Really, the light and dark is the emphasis of this picture.